Hello, digital filmmaking class. Welcome to the first of my digital lectures. That joke probably would have killed in the classroom, let's be honest. Anyway, welcome to the first part of a screenwriting lecture. We're going to go through this fairly quickly because the idea here is not so much for me to talk your heads off through a screen, but rather to present you with some basic stuff and then allow you to bring questions into the classroom uh, for our next week's class. So we're going to start talking about screenwriting here, and let's just kick right off. Every script, we need 5 things. It's the same as just about any story. And when we're talking about screenwriting, we need to always remember that we are writing a story first and foremost. Okay, obviously that story is going to one day be broken down into a bunch of different mechanical and logistical processes, equipment, schedules, budgets, all of that junk. But from the forefront, at the very beginning, we are crafting a narrative, we are crafting a story, and we need to approach it that way. We need to think of it in the same way that we would think of making a novel, that whole kind of romantic idea of telling a story and being a storyteller. So we need these 5 things: plot, character, conflict, setting, and theme. Let's just power right through what each one of them means. Okay, plot. This is obviously the story. It's the literal what happens of the movie itself. And then a synopsis, which is a word you hear a lot, is a shortened version of the plot. There are 2 kind of plots that we're going to focus on when we're talking about basic storytelling, and that's plot-driven and character-driven. And here's a couple of examples of high-quality space movies that you can take a look at here. Go ahead and pause the video now if you want to watch these trailers and see examples of plot-driven movies. All right, by now you've certainly watched Hidden Figures and Armageddon and decided which one is better. It's probably Hidden Figures, but who can't go for Bruce Willis in a spacesuit, right? Let's move on. Character. Obviously, a character or characters are who or what the story, our movie in general, is about. We can have character-driven stories, which are going to be different than plot-driven stories. Plot-driven, again, we're moving the story forward with the story itself or with the events of the story. Think of like any disaster movie. Then character-driven is the character's personality. It's kind of more those slice of life movies, or something to where a character is constantly making decisions, and those decisions are what are changing the story, changing the plot as we go. Okay, here's a trailer for Lady Bird and the entire film Plastic Bag, which, if you haven't seen, is a movie about a plastic bag narrated by Werner Herzog. Amazing, right? Okay, here is main protagonist versus ensemble cast. In a main protagonist type movie, there is one lead character that is driving the story throughout, and in an ensemble, there are numerous actors or characters who are playing equal roles. And even though this slide is poorly formatted and organized, you get the point. Go ahead and pause and watch these trailers if you like to see examples of these. But we've all, we can all think of something that we've seen before, where we've got either an ensemble cast, Ocean's 12, 11, Ocean's 13, the newest Ocean's movie with Sandra Bullock and the whole gang, or a lead main protagonist type movie. I don't know why, but The Curious Case of Benjamin Button's coming to brain. That's a weird movie to pull at random, but that's the one that I found. Okay, character-driven versus plot-driven. This slide just has a few different examples of character-driven films versus plot-driven films. Go ahead and watch these trailers on your own. But if you've seen the films, you will understand also what's going on here. And then the text is the text. Makes sense. Conflict. This is very important. We can't do movies without conflict. We have to have it, just like we have to have that in just about any story. Why would we watch a movie where every single thing is beautiful and brilliant and there are no problems to be solved? That's confusing and weird. So conflict is the cornerstone of what we're talking about when we're telling stories and making stories in the movies. It's the main problem that the character or characters faces throughout the story. And there are four main types of conflict. Can you name them? It's the reason why Superman's on this thing. Man versus man, man versus society, man versus nature, and man versus self. Okay, man versus man is pretty clear. Superman is often fighting a villain like Lex Luthor. Man versus society, Superman oftentimes has to fight against society's need to control him and his powers, right? They're not certain if this all powerful alien thing should be able to just do what he wants. Man versus nature, again, self-explanatory, right? If there's like a typhoon and Superman has to, use his mega super lungs to blow the typhoon back out into the ocean, that's man versus nature. And then man versus self, which is often the most complicated of the conflicts. Okay, if we think about it in terms of Superman, we're thinking about how he knows as a character that human beings are really not that great, right? Especially throughout history, they fight with each other, they take advantage of each other. Obviously, there are good apples, there are also bad apples, and just in general, human nature is not one that typically lends itself historically to positive things. And Superman knows this. Yet, he feels compelled to save humans and the human race at every turn. But that's where the conflict comes. He's saving something that he acknowledges may not actually be worth saving, and he's got to make that decision constantly as he battles these other forms of conflict. And if you can create a character that has all four of these, you are golden. You will have a great film because there will be so much going on and so much to deal with, and it will be so relatable that you'll win on all fronts. Let's put it that way. And that is because as people, we all have these types of conflict, right? Maybe you are competing with your coworker for Employee of the Month, to put it lightly. Maybe you are, you're struggling with something that society has deemed, bad taste or something that you shouldn't do, morally unjust. Maybe it's the middle of winter and it's super blizzardy and cold and you gotta get to work. Or maybe it's Friday and you're supposed to go out and party with your friends, but you just want to sit back and enjoy a glass of wine with your cat, but now you feel guilty because you're alone a lot. I don't know. That's then your versus self conflict, and we're all dealing with all these things. Hopefully not the wine cat thing very often, but maybe. And therefore we can relate when characters on screen have multiple layers and multiple levels. If you're not including multiple types of conflict, it's more than likely that you're making a plot-driven film. If we think about movies like The Day After Tomorrow, for example, Jake Gyllenhaal's stuck in a library in Antarctic New York. Well, there's not a whole lot of conflict going on except that the world's frozen over and he's either going to get rescued or not. It's not like he's got a whole lot of stuff going on, but we could kind of break it down if you've seen the film and say like, well, he's nervous about talking to this girl. That could maybe be Jake Gyllenhaal versus himself conflict. There's the nature conflict happening. I don't think I'd be stretching to try to find a societal conflict in that movie. And then maybe there's the other guy that the girl of his dreams is going to date, but that's not really a thing. So maybe, but not very much. Typically, if you can't nail all four kinds of conflict, you are not making a character-driven film, which is fine. Look at Transformers. Made bank. Okay, setting is the next one. Setting does not just necessarily relate to the actual place that your movie is. It's also the time, and then the condition of the place. There's a big difference between I Am Legend, New York, and Mad Men, New York, for example, or Gotham and Metropolis, two fictional superhero cities, but very, very different in their own right. Here's a couple of trailers for movies that are very setting heavy. Okay, Australia, obviously, like an Australian outback epic. So that setting is going to play a huge factor into the story. And then in The Inevitable Defeat of Mr. and Pete, you've got a movie that New York almost plays a character in. it's a huge struggle for this kid to survive because New York is such a tough city. But at the same time, he wouldn't really be able to do it as well as he does in a place that wasn't so poppin' like New York. And so the setting is often shaping and molding your story in a lot of ways as well. Here are a couple of film examples. We watched a bit of Cargo in the last class, and then MasterChef here. Two very different settings. Go ahead and watch these on your own time and see if you how you would describe them. How would you write these settings into a movie? What sort of descriptions would you use? How would you paint the picture, both visually, audibly, smells, all of those kind of things, the weather, the heat, any of that kind of stuff? How would you do that on the page? Finally, we come to theme, which is the film's message. What can be learned by the character or by the audience? Sometimes the theme is something that is taught to us sitting in the seats watching the movie, as opposed to something that is taught to the characters. Maybe the characters know the theme, they know the lesson, and they want you to figure it out too. And then here are a couple of trailers. Check out that D2 Mighty Ducks reference, booyah. And then the trailer for 42. But then also on the left is The Black Hole, which is a great short film that has a nice, easy to figure out theme. Go ahead and take a look. I can't remember if we watched it in class already, but take a look and figure that theme out for yourself. And also start to see in that short film how the world that we are subjected to, this particular office, how the setting, if you will, factors into the theme. Okay, which is, let's see, how does theme drive the narrative? The theme is kind of what sets up the world, right? What are the rules of this particular world? What are we allowed to do? What are we allowed to say? In a movie, you can make everything up, right? You can put a movie in a world that seems similar to ours, but the characters can get away with more outlandish behavior. Well, that's all derived from the theme. What is the point? What is the lesson? What is being taught to you? And then you can backtrack from there and say, okay, the characters can do these things, the characters cannot do these other things. Theme can also be expressed from many different angles. That could be camera angles, that could be camera position, shot size, visual juxtaposition. What are we cutting between? How fast are we cutting? Are we not cutting? Also between character decisions, right? Storytelling elements, different plot devices. We talked about setting a little bit just now, but continuing through that, here's a couple of quick examples. Check out the trailers on YouTube for these if you want to see it further. But so these are two examples of Western films. On the left, you have Slow West, some stills, and on the right, you have The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Again, some stills. Excuse me. And one of the classic things, or multiple classic things about the Western genre was that it was always kind of bleak, right? The heroes in Westerns were the ones that looked really rugged. They were wearing tattered clothes. They had unshaved faces. And then the villains were the very clean-cut, suited Easterners that were coming into town and trying to change the system. And that was a big thing in Westerns. Westerns had this kind of dark, dreary theme to them often because the American frontier really wasn't a very good place. It was always kind of like, are you a good guy? Are you a bad guy? You're kind of a both. And so the Western genre would reflect that. And one of the ways that you got a lot of that theme, that, everybody's not necessarily good and not necessarily bad as a theme, would be to desaturate the picture. You kind of drab it out. And by doing so in all these Westerns, you kind of paint this unhappy world through the coloring of the film. In Slow West, they did the exact opposite. Slow West is a recent Western where the movie's very pretty, very saturated, as you can see in comparison. Now, in a Western, why would you do that? Why would you take a movie that is going to have themes about characters who are not good, but not bad, but not good either, And why would you make it pretty and desaturated and fun to look at? Well, the point of it is that it's told from the perspective of a young boy who romanticizes the West in a way that all of the cowboys don't do, because they know how difficult it is and how scary it is. But he thinks it's beautiful. He thinks it's an awesome romantic thing, and he's going on this great journey throughout the movie to find this girl that he's in love with. And so the filmmakers decided to saturate and maybe even oversaturate the picture to reflect his own personal opinions of the beauty of the West and the beauty of his own thoughts and journey across this Western frontier, which is very different from, following a Clint Eastwood character through a movie where his decisions are dark and weighing him down, per se. And so this is just an example of how that setting is reflecting what you're supposed to get out of the theme of the movie. Here's 3 short film examples with different themes. Go ahead and check them out. They're actually 3 international films. Do be aware, World of Glory is kind of graphic, but it's also pretty crazy awesome. And then this last slide is more films to look at, some more short films to take a look at here. Number 6, Do Be Aware, is a little bit more raw from a filmmaking standpoint. It was put together by my teen students back in like the winter. But I like its theme, and go ahead and check that out and really see how a lot of the setting and the characters and the theme and all that kind of stuff, all the elements are coming together to make a very cohesive film. And start to decipher that. If you want to take a look at some more shorts before class, you've got shortoftheweek.com, which is a great website. And that is it for this video. Hopefully it wasn't too long for you. Shoot me an email or talk to me in class if you've got any questions about plot, characters, setting, theme, and conflict. All right. See y'all.